Making paper airplanes. So we're going to start with a piece of paper. Fold it in half. Okay? Now I can fold down the front, and I'm going to do the same thing on both sides so that my plane is symmetrical. So you can see, folded down the flap in the front, and then I'm going to fold down both of the sides. Okay, so it's pretty basic. Probably not that good of an airplane, right? That's the general idea. Okay. Okay. So go ahead and fold yours. Try to make it a little bit better. Okay. So basically you have almost the same, right? You folded these pieces a little bit differently, and you have some wider wings, right? Let's just show that. You have some wider wings. So you're predicting that having wider wings is going to make it fly a little bit farther?
I am.
Okay. Let's see how far this one goes. That went. That was worse than mine. Yeah. So it looks like it's not flying straight. Oh, what have we learned? What do you think?
The ratios probably need to be a little bit better in terms of wing size and body.
So you think that maybe instead of making bigger wings, making smaller wings might make it fly farther?
Probably smaller and stiffer wings would be a better.
Smaller and stiffer, so maybe if we folded these in half.
Maybe.
Okay, so let's look. I have an example of one that's going to fly really well. So why don't we go ahead and throw this one and see. Oh, that one flew much farther. Okay, so today we're going to work on making paper airplanes. So first what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you just a sheet of white paper. Go ahead and make a paper airplane. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at what you did here. So first you folded in the top portion to make a point at the end, right? And you folded over each side twice. Why did you choose to do this?
Aesthetically pleasing.
Aesthetically pleasing. So let's say that I asked you to make the paper airplane that would fly the farthest. Do you feel like this design would do that?
Now I do.
Do you feel like having these wings?
I feel like the wings are going to really set it off.
Okay. What else do you notice about your paper airplane that you think will be successful?
It's a classic design.
It's a classic design.
Classic.
Okay, so go ahead and throw it. See how far it goes? It did not go far at all. So your paper airplane kind of hooked in the air right when you threw it up. So what do you think might have caused that?
It's misshapen.
It's misshapen. What specifically?
Yes, it's not folded equally.
It's not folded. Okay. Anything else about the overall design that you feel like?
It's very flimsy.
It's flimsy?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, based on your observations, I'm going to have you fold another one. And you're going to try to get it to fly farther than it did the first time. Here's the only catch. You can pick, I have 3 different types of paper here. I have the same white paper that you already used. So you can just improve the design of the one that you already made. with the same paper if you feel like that's something that would make it fly farther. I have a piece of construction paper, just a little bit thicker, more coarse than the white paper. And then I have a sheet of lined loose leaf paper, which is a little bit thinner, more flimsy. Okay, so you're going to choose the construction paper?
I'm going to choose the construction paper.
Okay, so with this one, you're changing the paper and the... Are you going to do the same design that you already did?
No.
You're going to do a different design and different paper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what are your predictions? How much farther do you think it's going to fly?
500% farther.
500% farther, so 50 feet.
Say probably closer to 10 feet.
You think it only flew 2 feet?
I do think it only.
Okay. Okay, so you folded the first step the same, but instead of folding outward, now you're folding inward. Why are you doing that?
To make it more stable.
To make
the body a little more thick.
Okay, so you feel like having the weight more concentrated in certain areas will make it fly farther?
I just think it won't bend so much in the air.
Okay. Okay, so let's just go ahead and compare that to your original.
Mm-hmm.
So the original, we have kind of boxy edges, right? In this one, it's much more streamlined, right?
Mm-hmm.
What other differences do we have?
I felt like I folded it a little bit better, a little more evenly.
More evenly on both sides and more symmetrical.
Yeah.
Okay, I also noticed that in the first one, you chose kind of a rectangle design, whereas this one looks more like a triangle. Do you think that will be better?
I do.
In terms of, why do you think it's going to be better?
I think this was just too big.
Too big?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you folded these little flaps on the edges?
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and throw this one. Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's still going.
So that flew much farther. Right. How much farther would you say that flew?
20 feet.
You say it flew 20 feet? Okay.
At least.
Okay.
Maybe
Good.
even 30 feet.
So, significant improvement, right? We mentioned differences we have is your overall shape is completely different. We have this triangle versus a rectangle. You chose the other paper. Do you feel like making this design in the white paper, you feel like the construction paper would still fly farther?
Maybe not.
Maybe not?
Yeah.
You feel like maybe the white paper with this design would fly farther?
It doesn't really fold well because it was so thick.
Okay. So you feel like it might be falling apart in the air, whereas the thinner paper would hold its shape a little bit better?
A little bit.
Okay.
It's just my hypothesis, though.
Okay. Well, overall, great job. Definitely made some improvements. Do you have any other questions?
In watching the original lesson video after having taken Education 518, I was able to see many aspects of theories in my teaching of which I was not aware prior to taking the class. I was also able to reflect on my teaching and critically consider approaches that would improve instruction. The theories and strategies I chose for the recreation made the lesson much more interactive and engaging. In the first video, I relied heavily on showing rather than seeing what the student knew prior to doing the lesson. Had I done this in the first video, I probably would have found that he is better at making paper airplanes than me and didn't need the modeling at the beginning. Using individual constructivism to see where the student stood as far as background knowledge was really helpful in guiding the lesson because it eliminated the possibility of him getting bored because he didn't require the initial explanation. Using sociocultural theory with the zone of proximal development and introducing different types of paper seemed to keep the student active and interested. Similarly, by outlining aspects of each type of paper, I was able to help him see what introducing different types of paper would do to the flight of the airplane. The fact that, after refolding the airplane, he decided he would use a different type of paper if he were to redo the task validates the fact that the task was within his ZPD. If it had been too easy, he would have already known the optimal design and materials to use, and if it were too difficult, he would likely not have seen any improvements in flight with his refold. Social cognitive theory within the lesson did not necessarily go as planned, since I intended to provide critical feedback that would ensure credibility, but did not have the opportunity to do so since the student seemed to do this on his own upon reflection. The use of positive feedback to bolster his self-efficacy looked more like positive reinforcement, a la behaviorism, rather than social cognitive theory because of this. I would probably change this aspect of the lesson and find ways to provide more profound positive feedback, such as giving specific details about his successes, rather than simply saying good job and you made improvements. One strength of the video includes its emphasis on student-centered learning. Throughout the lesson, I did not impose on the student any restrictions or personal opinions, but rather let him figure out what to do on his own. My primary role in the video was to act as a facilitator to his learning, providing commentary and clarification for the ideas and statements he noted. I think this is a desirable way to teach and is supported by the student's responses in the video, as he seemed much happier than he did in the first video. One weakness of the lesson is that I did not have specific information about airplanes and optimal flight conditions, such as information about aerodynamics or weight distribution, to provide the student at the end of the lesson. If I were to redo the lesson, I would have this information to confirm or refute his hypotheses regarding the airplanes. This would give the lesson a more academic grounded basis. Another change I would make to the lesson would be to have the student refold the airplane one more time. Doing this would allow him to use what he learned from the first and second folds to potentially make an even better airplane. Knowledge about how different shapes and types of paper would contribute to flight helped the student succeed. It seemed that he had a good idea of what steps to take to improve the airplane, but this was also facilitated by his ability to experiment with different options as part of the lesson. Additionally, experiences in making paper airplanes prior to the lesson likely contributed to his success. The student learned concepts about physics in the lesson that he could potentially apply to other situations, though it is unlikely that he would encounter these specific situations in real life outside of the classroom. To give him the ability to apply what he learned in the lesson to new and novel situations, I could provide real-life examples related to the topic. One example could be to discuss how he could use what he learned about aerodynamics to choose a car with the best gas mileage based on its design materials and size. One example of practice that could be changed to improve student learning would be for me as the teacher to urge for discussion about several predetermined features of each airplane. An example would be to ask about the wing size, overall shape, front end, back end, width, and height, among other features. I would ask about each of these features for both airplanes the student makes. This would allow the student to make direct comparisons between these particular aspects of the planes, rather than having a somewhat unstructured and unguided discussion as we did in the video. One thing I could change to improve participation and make stronger links to prior knowledge would be to have the student explicitly describe features of airplanes in flight prior to having him fold the airplane. This would allow him to consider everything he already knows and apply it to his folding of the airplane, rather than just having him fold an airplane out of context. In thinking about these features, he might have taken them into account when he did the first fold and would have had a more successful flight. Overall, I felt that the redesigned lesson showed improvements in terms of the level of difficulty and student engagement. Thinking about the theories behind my lesson and reflecting on them in action helps me to see that teaching should be intentional and purposeful. Having predetermined objectives, theories, and assessments that all work together makes a lesson much more relevant and useful to students. Seeing the way the student responded to the second lesson that relied much more heavily on individual constructivism and sociocultural theory helps me see how successful these theories would be to use in my own classroom.
Okay.